All right, Maria, I'm just going to go down the laundry list because it feels like that's exactly what it is when it comes to talking about the Falcons and their head coaching interviews to, of course, replace the dearly departed Arthur Smith. So, Baltimore Ravens DC, Mike McDonald, Bengals offense coordinator Brian Callahan, Niners DC Steve Wilkes, Panthers DC Ejiro Ibero, Baltimore Ravens assistant head coach and D-line coach Anthony Weaver, University of Michigan head coach Jim Harbaugh, and I'm saving the other one for last because we now know that there is round 2 coming up for former New England Patriots head coach Bill Belichick. According to NFL Network's Ian Rappaport, and actually we have multiple reports and confirmations now that tell us that the Falcons will indeed have a second interview with Bill Belichick. Of course, the first interview was a one-on-one with Arthur Blank, so now that means an interview with Rich McKay, Terry Fontenot, and some of the other executives for the Falcons. Now, they've already requested interviews as well with the Detroit Lions OC Ben Johnson, their DC as well, Aaron Glenn, the Raiders interim head coach Antonio Pierce, Texans OC Bobby Slovic, and of course, Rams DC and former DC and interim head coach for the Falcons, Raheem Morris. That's a lot, but the Falcons are being thorough about this. And Arthur Blank mentioned that there was technically no timetable on this search. Now, here's what I think is interesting as far as twists and turns to the saga. Initially, the Falcons were blocking their own coordinators from taking interviews with other teams. And you kind of thought, okay, well, maybe that's an indication that Ryan Nielsen will stay on and there will be a head coach who's fine with him being the DC mastermind because maybe that head coach is an offensive mastermind or is bringing in his own OC. But suddenly we get word that Ryan Nielsen's been given permission to meet with the Jaguars. Marquise Williams, same thing. Blocked initially from interviews, now approved to meet with the New York Giants. Do you think this maybe tips the hand of whom the Falcons might be leaning toward or giving us some type of crumbs along the pathway as who they're going to go with as their head coach candidate?
I'm going to say yes and no.
Yeah.
So I thought that it was interesting. And as soon as I saw that Ryan Nielsen was free to interview, I said, they're getting close. Now, that doesn't necessarily, in my opinion, indicate that it's full sell Bill Belichick, even though I have heard from the beginning that that is the guy that they are going after, and they're going after him hard. So there's Bill Belichick, and then there's Jim Harbaugh. And I think that both of them are great candidates for the Falcons. And that's not to say the other people being interviewed are not also. I think there's some great coordinators in there who could be excellent head coaches for sure. But these are two legendary coaches. These are two high profile coaches I wouldn't have ever thought would be interested in coaching the Atlanta Falcons.
Yeah.
So you need to put your dividends in these guys, these high profile coaching candidates. And that's what they're doing. I mean, they're doing their due diligence, as you mentioned. They're going through the list and doing a good job at interviewing a whole lot of people from a lot of different backgrounds, which I think is important. I still am of the belief very strongly, actually, that the Falcons should go with an offensive minded guy. And if they don't, they need to bring in somebody who can be an offensive minded guy and really have control of the offense. Because that's just how you win in the league. Everybody knows that. But, I do think that they're getting very close. And a second interview with Bill Belichick just kind of confirms everything that people have been hearing and whispering about. But what I also will say, and what I want people to caution with, is that the Falcons are doing a very good job at being quiet. Okay. So a lot of people do not know anything. And that is really important to mention because they could pull a 360 and surprise us, though I don't necessarily believe that's going to happen. I think they're closer now than ever. It's a shame because I love Ryan Nielsen. I know you do, and we all love being around him. I think he's a genius, and I hope he gets a really good job if he doesn't stay here in Atlanta. But my gut tells me that two guys like Bill Belichick and Jim Harbaugh said, I want my own people, which doesn't really include the staff that's here in Atlanta right now.
Indeed. And I would have to say the same. And you kind of look at it and there's a nuance that you mentioned that maybe we don't talk about enough, but let's just be honest. Falcons, Hawks, Braves, United. There are only 2 teams out of those 4 that have really been destinations for free agents and that have really been destinations for coaches and front office. Braves and United. That's just the honest truth. United can pull just about any international player that they want at any given time. Carlos Bocanegra and company have done a great job, and even Garth Lagerwey coming in has done a fantastic job. Alex Anthopoulos has done the same. There have been challenges across time. Now, when Clint Capella decided to kind of lay his anchor down here, that was huge for the Hawks. That was the first big get. And like you said, we talked about in the last segment, DeJounte Murray, another big get, because the Hawks haven't exactly been a destination. Atlanta's not been a destination. The Falcons have started to become that destination. When we heard those words come out of Calais Campbell's mouth, that was huge for the stock, not just this season, but huge for the stock next season in terms of who they can attract. When you talk about a name like Bill Belichick, whether or not there are questions about his age, questions about how long he's going to be here, there's a caveat and a cachet that comes with that name. And that's something that you can't deny. And that could be whether he goes back to his old OC and brings in Josh Daniel, or whether that's talking about other staff members coming on board and how you can pull in free agents. That's what matters as well. And Jim Harbaugh, contrary to popular belief, because there's always the thought that, hey, he's a guy that, he's not really liked in, the NFL, but his players love him. Players had a lot of good things to say about him.
And he wins.
He wins, exactly. And he wins currently, right? He's winning currently, and he has the ability to pull from his experience in the NFL that maybe has softened him a bit, but on the same token, he's also got that cachet of being the current national champion, right? So those are things where I think it's the nuance of that might also make this a more appealing job than anything. And I think also Arthur Blank has made it clear that, hey, he's got some deep pockets and he doesn't mind backing up the Brinks truck, which I think is really good. Also, I think something that might play in the Falcons' favor in terms of if Bill Belichick is their top candidate, the guy whom they really want, news came out of Dallas yesterday, Jerry Jones confirming on Wednesday that they've decided to retain Mike McCarthy. And there were thoughts that, hey, if Dallas decides to part ways with him, then ultimately that puts Bill Belichick at the top of their list. So I think, too, that might be a win low-key for the Falcons, because that's one less attractive head coach opening that's available.
Yeah, and this has been such a crazy coaching cycle. We're entering, we've talked about this before on the show in particular, we're entering new territory in the sense that there are expectations that, in my mind, are not obtainable for coaches. Like, I can't even believe we're talking about Vrabel not being the head coach with the Titans anymore. Right. So it's getting crazy. Coaches are getting fired. There are a lot of emotional decisions. So I was low-key excited to see Mike McCarthy having his final year in Dallas. I think this will be it, the last year of his contract. But also it does tell you that Bill Belichick is more of an option for the Falcons than ever before, because the Cowboys, obviously, if that's an opening, you would link the two together, right? I don't know how well Jerry Jones and Bill Belichick would actually get along, but what I do know is that's one of the best jobs in the NFL. It's one of the most high-profile jobs. Even though the Cowboys can't win in the playoffs, it's still a really good job for someone. But I also think that the Falcons has slowly, you kind of said this, Tenitra, but it's slowly become a really attractive job in the league. You're in a really rough division, right? There's a lot of things happening in the NFC South right now. There are pieces on both sides of the ball. This is a much improved roster, and give Terry Fontenot and Arthur Smith some credit, because they really overhauled this roster. And there are also now assets to get you more. And the Falcons didn't have that before. So if you're Bill Belichick and you want to go in and own a division, prove that you can win with a quarterback with some better pieces than what you had in New England, this is the perfect place. And going back to what you said earlier, which I thought was a very good point, and it's very important to mention, because I know Falcons fans feel some type of way about Bill Belichick, which I don't quite understand, because this is the best coach in NFL history. He has 6 Super Bowl wins with the Patriots, and he has more as a defensive coordinator, right? So this guy wins. Not right now, currently. Everyone relax. But players want to play for someone like Bill Belichick. People will come from all over the country to want to coach for him, to want to play for him. The same could be said of Jim Harbaugh, but I'm just going to Bill because the second interview is being mentioned. So I think that that's important for people to realize. Falcons fans don't understand the clout that comes with Bill Belichick, the relevance that this franchise would have. I think it's fantastic. I truly do.
Indeed. And for all of you out there who are triggered by the thought of Bill Belichick and 28-3 Just imagine the same man that destroyed your hopes, dreams, and aspirations can take it all away in a matter of a season or 2 or 3, because I don't know how long they'll have him. He's probably a win now type of coach. And hey, look, he's got something to gun for because he wants those wins. He wants to be that winningest coach. And so it could be a win-win situation. Like we said, here
storm.
Storm. You couldn't write this in Hollywood, Maria. If they end up getting him and he ends up winning a Super Bowl in Atlanta, you cannot make these things up. Some other things that you can't make up is the things that we do right here in the Metro around Valentine's Day. We're going to talk about it on the other side.